track extensions, a narrow piece of wasteland that swept alongside. Boys had played chicken there once. Vandals had set fire to the banks. Now the line was fenced off. Plastic bags clung to hedges and empty bottles littered the grass. It was autumn, yet there were none of the signs. No trees, no copper leaves, no pale golds. The place was stark, depressing and still. A few days before, I'd been in Athens, drinking coffee in the October sun. My mobile had rung, a voice had spoken, and I'd recognized Rita, my mother's best friend. It was the way she'd said my name. Anna Flores. The way she'd rolled the R. The way she'd lowered her voice and explained how my mother had died. A stroke. When could I come home? Rita had discussed the funeral, asking for my opinion. Egg and cress versus salmon and cucumber. Lord of all hopefulness, or abide with me. Her talk had jarred with the smell of souvlaki drifting from a restaurant and the sound of a lone voice singing in a bar. Afterwards, I'd sat for ages weeping and feeling as if the music was the most sorrowful in the world. The train lurched, crawling forwards. Passengers shifted with mumbles of relief. I pulled on my denim jacket, fiddled with my bag, checked that everything was where it should be. Purse, phone, lipstick, bottle of Givenchy, photo of my mother. Photo of Gabriella. A man in a raincoat reached for his suitcase. I followed his lead and retrieved mine. A few people got off with me. I watched them rushing up the steps and across the bridge, scrabbling with their tickets and their bags. Dropping my case, I pulled out the handle and paused to look around me. Nothing much had changed. The empty waiting room, the broken bench, the CCTV. How long had those cameras been there? Too late to spot Gabriella leaving or to confirm the difference between sightings and lies. 3 years. That was how long it had been. A pit-stop visit before I'd left for Greece, although I'd seen my mother since, when she'd made the journey to London the day before I'd actually flown. Now, when I thought of that last meeting, in a cafe in Harrods with my mother picking at her scone, my stomach wrenched with guilt. 3 years. Only phone calls in between. Why had I assumed she'd go on forever? I should have known better than anyone how abruptly things changed. A guard emerged from a doorway on the other side of the track. He looked across, his glance assessing me. I gave a half smile, flexing my fingers, as if my suitcase was heavy and I'd stopped to take a rest. Straightening, I headed for the steps, trundling the shiny purple case behind me. I'd recognized him, although I'd pretended that I hadn't. He'd worked at the station for years. Then he'd worn tight trousers short enough to see his coloured socks. Now his trousers reached all the way down to the tops of his shoes with modest precision. That was the thing about this village. People stayed. Except for me. I wondered if he remembered who I was. Out on the street, the sky looked damaged, bandaged with dark clouds. The trees wore bare branches like weapons, and the pavements were piled with leaves. Soon they'd be swept up by men in yellow jackets. Men like Tom. For a moment I held my breath and listened, half expecting to hear the trundle of his cart. On a day like this, he would have been out, head bent, focused on his task, oblivious to the world. I blinked and shook my head. It wouldn't do to think about the past. Instead, I concentrated on the walk, taking the back roads, with their terraced houses and rows of parked cars, noticing a new takeaway, a pub with a name change, a building being renovated. The streets widened, and there was my mother's house, a rambling Victorian semi. I resisted the urge to stand still and absorb the moment, to pretend this visit was normal. Pushing on, I turned down the path, my stomach flipping at the creak of the gate. The door was black, with peeling paint and a hairline.